You contributed nothing. Shawn Johnston said, standing in divorce court like 7 years of Iva's life could be erased with one sentence. The judge looked up. Iva sat perfectly still, her wedding ring already gone. Her hands folded over a lap that had held 3 crying babies, folded thousands of tiny clothes, signed school forms at midnight, and carried a marriage Shawn only valued when it made him look successful. Shawn adjusted his expensive cufflinks and repeated it. She didn't work. She contributed nothing. Something inside Iva stopped begging to be understood. Her attorney, Lauren Miller, opened a thick folder and said, "Your Honor, we brought records. Before this story unfolds, tell me in the comments, do you believe unpaid labor in a marriage should count when everything falls apart?" Watch until the end, because Shawn called it nothing, but the court called it everything. The house looked like the kind of place where happy families were supposed to happen. White brick, black shutters, tall windows that caught the morning sun like something from a real estate magazine, a curved driveway, a backyard wide enough for birthday parties, summer sprinklers, and the kind of childhood Iva Johnston had always wanted to give her children. When she and Shawn first moved in, Eva stood in the empty kitchen with one hand resting on her pregnant belly and the other pressed against the cool marble counter. Shawn came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed the side of her neck. "Look at us," he whispered. "We made it." Back then, Eva believed him. She believed the house was proof of love, proof of partnership, proof that every late night, every careful budget, every sacrifice they had made in those early years was leading somewhere beautiful. She was 29, then newly pregnant with Owen, still working as an event coordinator for a boutique planning company in Chicago. She loved the rhythm of her work, the timelines, the floral mock-ups, the pressure of making chaos look effortless. She had a gift for details. She could walk into an empty ballroom and see the whole evening before a single table was set. Her boss once told her, "Eva, you don't just plan events. You create feelings." Eva carried that sentence around like a secret flame. Then Owen came, and with him came love so deep it frightened her. He was born in the middle of a snowstorm, tiny and furious, with Shawn's dark hair and Iva's wide brown eyes. Eva remembered holding him against her chest in the hospital while Shawn cried beside her bed, promising he would protect them forever. For a while, he almost looked like the man who meant it. But when maternity leave neared its end, Shawn began leaving articles on the kitchen island about childcare costs. He mentioned wait lists, germs, safety, how much better it would be for Owen to have his mother home. At least for the first year, Shawn said one night while Iva rocked Owen through another crying spell. You know it makes sense. Iva was exhausted. Her body still felt borrowed. Her hair was falling out in the shower. She had not slept more than 3 hours in a row for weeks. "I don't want to lose myself," she admitted softly. Shawn smiled like she was being dramatic. "You won't lose yourself. You'll be with our son. And my salary is growing fast. We don't need your income right now. Right now." That was how it started. Temporary, practical, for the family. So Iva resigned. Her coworkers sent flowers. Her boss hugged her and told her the door would always be open. Eva smiled through it, holding Owen in one arm, telling herself she was choosing love. The first year blurred into bottles, burp cloths, pediatric appointments, laundry, and nights where Owen screamed until dawn while Shawn slept because he had a big meeting tomorrow. When Owen was 8 months old, Shawn got promoted. He came home with champagne, kissed Iva on the forehead, and said, "See, this is why we made the right decision. You handle home, I handle everything else. Everything else." The phrase stayed with her, because somehow home meant everything that never ended. The meals, the cleaning, the diapers, the grocery lists, the thank you notes, the insurance forms, the doctor calls, the birthday gifts for Shawn's relatives, the dry cleaning, the holiday cards, the school research before Owen could even walk. And everything else meant Shawn put on a suit and left. 2 years later, Lily was born. By then, Iva no longer spoke about returning to work. Shawn did not ask. People stopped asking too. At family gatherings, Patricia Johnston would pat Iva's hand and say, "You're lucky, honey. Not every woman gets to stay home. Lucky." Iva would smile politely while calculating whether she had enough clean pajamas for both children and whether she had remembered to thaw chicken for dinner. Patricia adored Shawn in the way some mothers adore sons who become successful men. She spoke about him as if his paycheck was a moral achievement. "My Shawn has always been ambitious," Patricia would say. "He needed a wife who could support that." Support. That word sounded noble until Iva realized it meant disappear. When Grace came 3 years after Lily, Iva was no longer simply tired. She was hollowed out. Her days began before sunrise and ended long after everyone else slept. She could identify each child by the sound of their footsteps in the hallway. She knew which cough meant allergies and which meant fever. She knew Owen needed quiet after school, Lily needed reassurance before bedtime, and Grace only stopped crying if Iva hummed, "You Are My Sunshine," while pacing the nursery. Shawn knew where his cufflinks were because Iva placed them in the small wooden tray by his closet. He knew his shirts were pressed because she ironed them at midnight. He knew his mother's birthday gift arrived on time because Iva ordered it, wrapped it, and signed both their names. He knew the refrigerator was full, the children were bathed, the bills were scheduled, the house was presentable, and his life looked polished from the outside. But he never called that work. He called it staying home. Slowly, money became a language Shawn used to remind Iva who had power. At first, it was subtle. "Put it on my card. I'll cover it. My bonus should hit next week." Then it became sharper. "My money doesn't grow on trees, Eva. Do you really need that? You have no idea how stressful it is to be the only one providing." The first time Iva asked before buying herself a winter coat, she heard her own voice and felt embarrassed. It was not an expensive coat. Her old one had a broken zipper. She had spent $160 on new shoes for Owen the week before because he had outgrown his sneakers again, and somehow that made her feel guilty for needing warmth. Shawn barely looked up from his phone. "Fine," he said. "Just don't go crazy." She bought the cheaper coat. It was thin, but she told herself it was enough. That became Iva's private language, too. Enough. The leftover coffee was enough. The old dress was enough. The quick shower was enough. The silent crying in the pantry was enough. Meanwhile, Shawn's life expanded. Better suits, better watches, golf weekends with executives, late dinners with clients, a black SUV he said he deserved because he was building something. And Eva's world shrank to the radius of the house. The beautiful house. The house everyone praised. The house that swallowed her whole. At Shawn's company holiday dinner that December, Iva wore a navy dress she had owned since before Owen was born. She curled her hair while Grace cried in the bathroom doorway, and Lily asked if Mommy was going to be a princess. Shawn rushed her from downstairs, irritated because they were late. When they arrived at the restaurant, Shawn transformed. He became charming, bright, effortless. He introduced Iva to Charles Bennett, his boss, with one hand on the small of her back. "This is my wife, Iva," Shawn said, smiling like he was telling a joke before anyone else knew the punchline. "She spends my money and keeps the kids alive." The table laughed. Not cruelly, maybe, but easily, as if Iva's life was a cute little footnote to Shawn's success. Eva smiled because she had learned women like her were expected to smile. She stood beside him in that crowded, glittering restaurant and felt something inside her fold quietly in half. Shawn did not notice, or worse, maybe he did. Maybe he noticed and liked that she stayed silent. That night on the drive home, snow began to fall over the windshield. Shawn talked about office politics bonuses and how Charles had clearly been impressed with him. Eva stared out at the passing streetlights. In the back seat, Owen slept with his mouth open. Lily clutched a stuffed rabbit. Grace breathed softly in her car seat. Iva looked at her children and told herself the hurt was worth it. That was the lie she survived on for a long time. But somewhere deep down, under the exhaustion and loyalty and fear, another truth was beginning to wake up. If Shawn could laugh while erasing her in public, what would he do when no one was watching? By the time the company holiday dinner arrived the following year, Eva Johnston had mastered the art of disappearing gracefully. It started 3 hours before they even left the house. Grace refused to nap. Lily could not find her patent leather shoes. Owen had a low fever that made Iva debate canceling entirely, until Shawn walked into the kitchen, loosened his tie, and said, "Please don't do this tonight. Charles Bennett is bringing regional leadership. Not how's Owen. Not, do you need help? Just pressure. Always pressure." So Iva gave Owen medicine, braided Lily's hair while balancing Grace on one hip, ordered pizza for the babysitter, steamed Shawn's white dress shirt, and curled her own hair in 10 rushed minutes while the baby cried outside the bathroom door. She chose a dark navy dress she had worn before because buying a new one felt irresponsible now. The fabric fit tighter around her waist than it used to after 3 pregnancies, but Shawn barely glanced at her anyway. "You almost ready?" he called impatiently from downstairs. Eva grabbed her earrings and looked at herself one last time in the mirror. She looked tired. Not old, not unattractive, just tired in the deep, invisible way women became tired when everyone leaned on them and nobody noticed the weight. The restaurant downtown glowed with gold light and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Valets hurried through the cold, while executives and their spouses stepped out of black SUVs wrapped in expensive coats and louder confidence. The moment Shawn entered, he changed. Eva noticed that first. At home, Shawn moved through rooms, distracted, irritated, detached. But here among polished people and crystal glasses, he became magnetic. He laughed easier, stood straighter, smiled wider. He belonged here. And suddenly Iva felt like she didn't. A hostess guided them toward a private dining room where a long table shimmered under hanging chandeliers. Shawn immediately slipped into conversation with men in tailored suits, while Eva followed half a step behind, carrying the social burden women were expected to carry silently. Smile. Be pleasant. Look supportive. Don't embarrass your husband. Charles Bennett greeted them warmly. "Shawn," he boomed. "Glad you made it." Then he turned to Iva, "And this beautiful woman must be your better half." Before Iva could answer, Shawn chuckled. "She's definitely the more patient half. Iva runs the home front while I keep the lights on." People laughed politely. Iva smiled, because that was easier than explaining how humiliating it felt to hear your entire existence summarized like a hobby. Then she saw her, Brooke Caldwell, tall, blonde, elegant in the kind of effortless way that suggested she had never cleaned yogurt out of car seats or cried quietly while folding laundry at midnight. Brooke wore a fitted emerald dress and confidence like perfume. When she walked toward Shawn, her face lit up too naturally. "There he is," Brooke said warmly. "I was wondering if you'd bail on us." "Us. Not the company. Us." Shawn grinned. "Wouldn't miss it." Brooke touched his arm briefly while laughing at something he said, and the gesture lasted barely a second too long. Most people would not have noticed. Iva did. Women always notice the tiny things first. The way Brooke already knew Shawn drank bourbon, not wine. The way she leaned close when she spoke to him. The way Shawn looked at her before answering questions like he cared what she thought. During dinner, Iva sat beside a corporate attorney's wife who talked for 20 straight minutes about kitchen renovations, while Shawn remained absorbed in conversation across the table with Brooke and Charles. Every few minutes, Iva caught fragments. "Tokyo deal? Private investors?" "You were right, Brooke. You always think ahead." At one point, Iva tried joining the discussion. I remember Shawn mentioning. Shawn interrupted instantly. "It's complicated finance stuff, babe." "Babe?" The word landed like a hand gently pushing her out of the room. Charles laughed lightly. "You're lucky, Shawn. My wife would kill me if I worked your hours." Shawn lifted his whiskey glass. "Oh, Iva doesn't mind. She knows I'm doing it for the family." Brooke smiled over the rim of her wine glass. It takes a special kind of woman to support ambition like that. The comment sounded complimentary, but something underneath it felt sharp. Iva forced another smile. By dessert, the room had grown louder with alcohol and executive confidence. Shawn was in the middle of telling a story about a difficult client negotiation when Brooke leaned toward him, laughing. "You thrive under pressure," she said softly. And Shawn looked at her the way he used to look at Iva years ago, like being understood was intoxicating. Iva's stomach tightened. She looked down at her untouched cheesecake and suddenly remembered standing barefoot in the kitchen that morning, scraping dried oatmeal off Grace's high chair while Shawn barked into a Bluetooth headset about quarterly projections. Pressure. He always talked about pressure like it belonged only to him. As the dinner continued, Brooke excused herself to the restroom. Shawn checked his phone almost immediately afterward and stood. Back in a second, he muttered. Iva watched him disappear down the hallway. 10 seconds later, something ugly twisted inside her chest. Not jealousy exactly. Instinct. She hated herself for it, but she stood too. The hallway outside the dining room was dimly lit and lined with framed black and white city photographs. Iva walked slowly, telling herself she was being ridiculous. Then she heard laughter. Low, intimate. She froze near the corner. Brooke stood beside the restroom entrance, one hand touching Shawn's chest, while he smiled down at her. Not a friendly smile, not professional, a smile that belonged somewhere private. "You're terrible," Brooke whispered. "You like terrible," Shawn replied. Ava felt the floor tilt beneath her. Before she could think, Brooke looked up and saw her. Everything changed instantly. Brooke stepped back. Shawn turned sharply. For half a second, guilt flashed across his face. Then annoyance replaced it. "Iva," he said flatly. "You okay?" The question sounded less concerned and more irritated, like she had interrupted something important. Iva's throat tightened. "I was looking for the restroom." Brooke recovered first. "It's right there," she said smoothly, pointing past them. Then she walked away without another word. Shawn exhaled hard. "Seriously," he muttered. Iva stared at him. "What was that?" "Nothing." "That didn't look like nothing." Shawn rubbed a hand over his jaw. "You're embarrassing me." The words hit harder than she expected. Embarrassing him? Not hurting her. Not betraying her. Just embarrassing him. "I saw the way she touched you," Iva whispered. "Oh my God." Shawn laughed under his breath. "Brooke is a colleague. She was touching your chest. She touches everybody." "No, she doesn't." Shawn stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know what your problem is lately? You spend so much time at home that you invent drama to feel something." Iva physically recoiled. "That's not fair. It's exhausting, Iva." Shawn shook his head. "I work constantly to support this family, and instead of appreciating it, you act paranoid over basic human interaction." The old guilt immediately crawled into her chest. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe exhaustion really was making her insecure. Maybe motherhood had made her too sensitive. That was the terrifying thing about Shawn. He could wound her and still make her apologize for bleeding. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Shawn relaxed instantly, like this outcome was inevitable. "Thank you." Then he kissed her forehead, like she was a child having a tantrum. "I need you to stop creating problems where there aren't any." The ride home was silent, except for the windshield wipers cutting through falling snow. Shawn scrolled through emails in the passenger seat, while Iva drove because he had drank too much whiskey at dinner. At a red light, his phone buzzed against the console. A message preview lit up the screen. "Brooke made it home. Still think you looked better in the blue tie?" Iva stared at the words. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel. Shawn noticed too late. Quickly, he flipped the phone over. Neither of them spoke. At home, Shawn went upstairs without explanation, while Iva cleaned melted snow off Lily's boots and carried sleeping Grace to her crib. Later, while hanging Shawn's coat in the laundry room, something slipped from the pocket onto the floor. A folded cocktail napkin. Iva bent slowly and opened it. Written in dark red lipstick were 5 words, "You deserve a woman who matches your ambition." Iva stood there under the harsh laundry room light. surrounded by detergent bottles and baskets of tiny clothes, staring at the sentence until the letters blurred. For the first time in 7 years, she allowed herself to think something terrifying. Maybe the marriage was not dying. Maybe Shawn had already left it. For 3 days after the holiday dinner, Iva Johnston convinced herself she was imagining things. That was what survival inside a marriage like hers required. Minimize, rationalize. Doubt yourself before you doubted him. The lipstick message sat folded inside the back pocket of her wallet like a tiny live grenade. She told herself there were explanations. Brooke was flirtatious with everyone. Shawn was ambitious, charismatic, successful. Women probably flirted with him all the time. And yet something inside Iva had changed the moment she saw Brooke's hand resting against Shawn's chest in that dim hallway. It was not just suspicion anymore. It was recognition. The problem was that recognition did not magically make her brave. So she kept moving through her days, packing lunches, folding laundry, cutting strawberries into heart shapes for Lily, because Lily refused to eat fruit unless it looked happy. Meanwhile, Shawn moved through the house like a man increasingly irritated by his own family. He came home later. He answered questions with one-word replies. He spent entire dinners scrolling through emails while Owen talked about school projects and Grace threw peas from her high chair. One night, Lily proudly held up a drawing from preschool. "Daddy, look, it's our family." Shawn barely glanced at it. "That's great, sweetheart." He never looked up from his phone. Lily's smile faded almost instantly. Iva felt something crack quietly inside her chest. Children noticed everything, even the things adults pretended were invisible, especially those things. As winter deepened, Shawn began criticizing the house more openly. The towels weren't folded correctly. The dishwasher had been loaded wrong. The kids were too loud. Dinner was late. The pantry was disorganized. The dry cleaning wasn't ready. Nothing Iva did seemed enough anymore. One Tuesday morning, Shawn walked into the kitchen already irritated. "Where's my gray tie?" Iva was feeding Grace oatmeal while helping Owen study spelling words and reminding Lily to put on her boots. In the closet, she answered distractedly. "No, it's not." "Yes, it is." "Second drawer." Shawn stormed upstairs anyway. 30 seconds later, he shouted from the bedroom. "You reorganized my things again?" Iva closed her eyes briefly. She had not touched his closet in weeks. When Shawn came back downstairs, tie in hand exactly where she said it would be, he did not apologize. Instead, he muttered, "You make everything harder than it needs to be." Then he left for work without kissing her goodbye. Iva stood frozen in the kitchen while Grace smeared oatmeal across her tray. The old version of herself, the woman before motherhood, before exhaustion, before years of being slowly diminished, would have been angry. Now she just felt tired. Later that afternoon, Patricia Johnston stopped by unexpectedly carrying shopping bags from a department store downtown. "I found the cutest sweater set for Grace," Patricia announced as she entered without knocking properly. Eva forced a smile. "That's sweet. Thank you." Patricia surveyed the kitchen. There were dishes soaking in the sink. A basket of unfolded laundry sat near the hallway. Lily's crayons covered half the dining table. Patricia sighed dramatically. "You know, sweetheart, Shawn works too hard for this place to look chaotic all the time." Eva swallowed hard. The kids were home all day because Owen had a fever. Patricia waved the explanation away. "When I raised Shawn, my house was spotless." Of course it was, Iva thought bitterly. Patricia had a husband who actually came home. But women like Patricia never gave other women grace. They only measured how well they endured suffering. Patricia sat at the kitchen island while Iva made coffee. "You know Shawn's under a lot of pressure right now," she said casually. "You should be careful not to add stress." The words landed like blame. Iva stirred cream into Patricia's cup slowly. "I try not to." Patricia studied her. "You've changed, Iva. What does that mean?" "You used to take more pride in yourself." Eva looked down at her leggings stained faintly with applesauce. She wanted to laugh, or scream, Or ask Patricia when exactly she was supposed to take pride in herself between 3 children, no sleep, and a husband who treated her like unpaid staff. Instead, she said quietly, "I'm busy." Patricia softened her tone slightly, the way people did when they thought they were offering wisdom. Men like Shawn need admiration. They need peace at home. Ambitious men drift when they feel criticized. Drift. Such a gentle word for betrayal. Iva's stomach tightened. That night, Shawn came home after 9, carrying expensive takeout containers. "I already made dinner," Iva said. "Well, now we have options." He tossed his keys onto the counter and loosened his tie. Then his phone buzzed. Shawn glanced down, smiled. Tiny, quick, instinctive. But Iva saw it. "Who is that?" she asked carefully. Shawn looked up, immediately defensive, before she even accused him of anything. "A coworker." "Brooke." The air changed. A pause too long, then Shawn scoffed. "Jesus Christ. That's not an answer. You're doing this again?" Iva crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "I saw the message in the car." "What message?" "The one she sent you after the dinner." Shawn laughed sharply and walked to the refrigerator. She complimented a tie. "Relax. You lied to me." "No, you're obsessing." Eva stared at him. "That woman wrote on a napkin that you deserve someone who matches your ambition." Shawn's expression darkened instantly. "You went through my pockets." The manipulation hit so fast, it almost made her dizzy. "I found it while hanging up your coat. So now you're snooping? I'm trying to understand why another woman talks to my husband like that." Shawn slammed the refrigerator door shut hard enough to rattle magnets. "Because she respects me." "Iva," the words echoed through the kitchen. Silence followed. Even Grace froze in her high chair. Eva felt her throat tighten painfully. "What does that mean?" Shawn rubbed his forehead like she was exhausting him. "It means Brooke understands what ambition looks like. And I don't." "You used to." The sentence sliced clean through her. Used to. As if motherhood had ruined her. As if the years she spent raising his children and supporting his career had somehow made her less intelligent, less worthy, less interesting. Iva whispered, "I gave up everything for this family." Shawn looked at her with cold frustration. "And I gave you this life. The house, the cars, the schools, the kitchen, the neighborhood." That was what he meant. As though love could be replaced by square footage. Eva looked around the kitchen, suddenly seeing it differently. Not as a home, as evidence. Evidence of everything she had traded away piece by piece. That night, after Shawn went upstairs, Eva stayed alone at the kitchen table long after the children were asleep. The dishwasher hummed softly. Snow fell outside the windows. Her coffee went cold, untouched beside her. Eventually, she stood and began wiping down the counter mechanically, trying to calm the panic spiraling inside her chest. That was when she noticed the envelope, half hidden beneath a stack of mail near Shawn's briefcase. At first, she almost ignored it. Then she saw the bank logo. Curiosity prickled down her spine. Eva picked it up carefully. The envelope had already been opened. Inside was a statement from an account she had never seen before. Different account number, different balance, large transfers, very large transfers. Her pulse began hammering. She scanned the transactions again. Bonuses, deposits, wire transfers. Money Shawn had never mentioned. Money that was not connected to their joint accounts. Her hands started shaking. For years, Shawn had made comments about budget spending, sacrifices, and financial pressure while secretly moving money somewhere she could not see. The realization made her physically nauseous. This was no longer just emotional distance. This was preparation. A man building exits while his wife packed school lunches. Footsteps sounded upstairs. Eva quickly slid the papers back into the envelope. Her heart pounded violently as she returned it exactly where she found it. A few minutes later, Shawn walked back into the kitchen wearing sweatpants, grabbing bottled water from the fridge. He barely looked at her, but before heading upstairs again, he paused. "You know what your problem is?" he said casually. Eva's stomach dropped. You've gotten too comfortable." Then he walked away. Iva sat there in silence long after he disappeared upstairs. Too comfortable. The woman who had not slept through the night in 6 years. The woman who had stretched grocery budgets, sacrificed careers, buried loneliness, and carried an entire household on her back. Comfortable. For the first time, something colder than sadness moved through Iva Johnston. Not heartbreak, not fear, awareness. And awareness was dangerous. Because once a woman finally saw the truth clearly, it became impossible to survive by pretending anymore. The spreadsheet appeared on the refrigerator 3 days later. Shawn taped it there before leaving for work, neat and deliberate, like he was hanging a family schedule or one of Lily's drawings. Except this one was titled Monthly Household Expenses. Iva stood barefoot in the kitchen, holding Grace on her hip, while coffee brewed behind her. For a second, she just stared at it, without understanding why her chest tightened immediately. Then she stepped closer. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, private school savings, groceries, car payments, vacation fund. Every number was highlighted in different colors. And beside nearly every line, Shawn had typed, "Paid by Shawn Johnston." Eva read it twice, then a third time. Something hot and humiliating crawled slowly up her throat. It was not a budget, it was a message. When Shawn came downstairs adjusting his cufflinks, Iva was still standing there staring at the refrigerator. "What's this?" she asked quietly. Shawn grabbed coffee from the counter. "A reality check." He said it casually, like they were discussing weather. Eva looked back at the spreadsheet. "You put this on the refrigerator so we can both see where money actually comes from." The words hit with surgical precision. Grace squirmed in Iva's arms, whining softly for breakfast, but Iva barely noticed. "You think I don't know you pay the bills. I think you've gotten disconnected from reality." Shawn took a sip of coffee. "You spend money constantly without understanding the pressure behind earning it." Eva stared at him in disbelief. "I buy groceries and things for the kids. You buy without thinking because you've never had to carry financial responsibility." The cruelty of it almost stole her breath. 7 years. 7 years of supporting his career, raising their children, running every invisible part of his life, and now he spoke to her like she was a reckless teenager with his credit card. Owen walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, where's my blue hoodie laundry room?" Iva answered automatically. Lily followed behind him, carrying her stuffed rabbit. "Can I have waffles?" "Yes, baby." Shawn pointed toward the refrigerator. "See?" he said to Iva. "This is what I mean. Everyone depends on me." Eva looked at him slowly. "No," she said quietly. "They depend on both of us." Shawn laughed under his breath, like she had said something childish, for different things. Then he grabbed his briefcase and left. The front door shut. Silence rushed into the kitchen behind him. For a moment, Iva simply stood there, gripping Grace tighter against her chest. Then Lily looked up at the spreadsheet and asked innocently, "Mommy, what's expenses?" Iva forced a smile so fast it hurt. Adult stuff. But even after Shawn left, the spreadsheet stayed there all day like a public accusation, hanging in the center of the house. Every time Iva walked past it, she felt smaller. That afternoon, Patricia Johnston arrived carrying shopping bags and unsolicited opinions as usual. "Oh, good," Patricia said when she saw the spreadsheet. "About time." Iva looked up sharply. "You knew about this." Patricia shrugged while removing her gloves. "Shawn mentioned you've been overspending lately." Eva almost laughed. Overspending. Last week, she had stood in Target comparing 2 brands of cereal to save $3. "I buy groceries," Eva said carefully, "and things for the kids." Patricia sat at the kitchen island. "And Shawn buys everything else." Iva stared at her. Something dangerous flickered low in her stomach. Not anger exactly. The beginning of anger. Patricia continued casually. "You young women forget how lucky you are. Shawn gives you a beautiful home, security, stability." Eva turned back toward the sink before Patricia could see the expression on her face. Security. Funny word. because lately, she had never felt less secure in her life. Patricia opened her designer handbag and pulled out receipts. "I spent years supporting my husband, too," she said proudly. "That's what wives do." The sentence echoed strangely in Eva's head. That's what wives do. But nobody ever asked what husbands were supposed to do in return. Respect them, see them, protect them, or just finance them. Grace began crying from her high chair, wanting out. Lily spilled juice on the counter. Owen shouted from upstairs that he could not find his homework folder. Without thinking, Iva moved instantly, wiping juice, lifting Grace, finding homework, answering questions, managing chaos. Patricia watched the entire thing happen in real time and still said, "I just think Shawn deserves more appreciation." Iva almost dropped the plate in her hand. That night, after the children went to bed, she stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the spreadsheet again. The house hummed softly around her. Dishwasher running, dryer spinning, baby monitor crackling faintly. Everything functioning because she made it function. Slowly, Iva grabbed a pen from the junk drawer. Then she pulled a notepad toward herself. At the top of the page, she wrote, "Things I did today." The first few entries came easily. Packed 3 lunches, doctor appointment for Grace, helped Owen with math homework, scheduled plumber, laundry, dinner, baths, school forms, cleaned kitchen. Then she kept going. Answered teacher emails, bought birthday gift for classmate, refilled prescriptions, comforted Lily after nightmare, organized daycare paperwork, researched summer camp, meal planning, mopped floors, read bedtime stories. The list stretched farther than she expected. By the time she stopped writing, nearly 2 pages were filled. Eva stared at them silently. For the first time in years, she saw her life laid out in ink instead of exhaustion. And suddenly, the phrase "did nothing" sounded insane. The next morning, she started another page, then another the day after that. Within a week, it became habit. She documented everything: wake-up times, school pickups, meals cooked, appointments scheduled, nightmares soothed, laundry folded, bills organized, medicine doses, every invisible thing required to keep 5 human beings functioning. At first, the lists were just proof for herself, a private rebellion against erasure. Then one Thursday evening, something happened that changed the meaning of those pages forever. Shawn came home drunk. Not stumbling drunk. Corporate drunk. The kind of drunk wealthy men carried with arrogance instead of shame. His cheeks were flushed from whiskey and expensive steakhouse laughter. He tossed his keys carelessly onto the counter while Iva cleaned up after dinner. "You missed Owen's parent-teacher conference," she said quietly. Shawn loosened his tie. "I had clients in town." "Owen waited for you." Shawn rolled his eyes. "Oh my God, Iva, not tonight. He got an academic award. I said I'm sorry." But he did not sound sorry. He sounded annoyed. Grace began crying upstairs through the baby monitor. Lily needed help brushing her teeth. Owen sat at the dining table pretending not to listen. Eva felt stretched so thin she could barely breathe. "You know," Shawn muttered while pouring water into a glass, "sometimes I think you like being miserable." Eva froze. "What, you act like you're carrying the entire world because you packed lunches and folded towels." The words landed brutally because they were so familiar. Years of labor reduced to chores so small they sounded ridiculous out loud. Eva whispered, "You have no idea what I do every day." Shawn laughed bitterly. "Exactly. Because none of it actually matters." Silence exploded through the kitchen. Even Owen looked up sharply. Eva's face drained of color. Shawn took another sip of water before delivering the sentence that finally split something open inside her. "Maybe I should have married someone who actually adds value." For a second, nobody moved. The refrigerator hummed. Water dripped softly from the sink faucet. Upstairs, Grace cried again, and Iva looked at the man she had loved for nearly a decade and realized something terrifying. He truly believed her life belonged beneath his. Not beside it, beneath it. Slowly, carefully, Iva folded the dish towel in her hands. Then she looked directly at him. Maybe she said softly, "You already did." Shawn frowned slightly, confused by the calmness in her voice. But Iva turned away before he could answer. Because for the first time in 7 years, she was no longer trying to convince Shawn she mattered. She was starting to convince herself. Lily's fifth birthday party started raining disaster at 9 in the morning. Grace spilled orange juice over the pink tablecloths Iva had ironed the night before. The bakery called saying the unicorn cake would be delayed. One of the rented pony handlers canceled last minute because of a family emergency. And Shawn still had not answered a single text. Eva stood in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by ribbon scraps, paper decorations, and half-filled treat bags, while her phone buzzed uselessly in her hand. "Eva, are you still coming home early?" Eva Lily keeps asking where you are. "Eva, please don't be late today." No response. Of course. Outside, workers finished setting up white canopy tents in the backyard while pastel balloons swayed in the cold spring wind. Eva had spent weeks planning this party because Lily had been talking about it since Christmas. A magical garden birthday, she called it. And Iva wanted at least one perfect memory for her daughter. By noon, the house smelled like vanilla frosting and stress. Owen helped carry juice boxes outside while Lily ran through the kitchen in a glittery pink dress, shouting, "Mommy, do I look like a princess?" Iva knelt quickly, smoothing Lily's curls back from her face. "You look beautiful, baby." Lily grinned. "Daddy's gonna love it." The sentence hit Iva harder than it should have, because she suddenly realized Lily still believed Shawn would show up excited. Children always believe their parents until reality forced them not to. Guests began arriving around 2. Mothers carrying wrapped gifts, children screaming happily across the backyard, music playing softly through outdoor speakers. Iva moved nonstop between greeting people, cutting fruit trays, helping children with games, and bouncing Grace on her hip when the baby became overstimulated. Every few minutes, Lily tugged her sleeve. "Did Daddy text yet soon, sweetheart? Is Daddy coming?" "Yes, baby." At least Iva hoped so. By 3:30, Lily's smile had started fading. Cake time approached. Still no Shawn. Patricia Johnston arrived wearing oversized sunglasses and expensive perfume. She kissed Lily dramatically and handed over a giant dollhouse before immediately asking, "Where's Shawn working?" Iva answered tightly. Patricia sighed. "Well, you know how important his career is," as though that explained everything, as though ambition excused absence. Eva forced herself to keep smiling for Lily. The children gathered near the decorated cake table, while Owen helped organize games. Grace cried because she missed her nap. One little boy threw up near the bounce house after too much candy. And through it all, Iva kept checking the driveway. At 4:07 p.m., a black luxury SUV finally pulled in. Relief rushed through Lily instantly. Daddy. She sprinted toward the driveway before Iva could stop her. Shawn stepped out of the vehicle, adjusting his suit jacket, and Brooke Caldwell stepped out from the passenger side. Everything inside Iva went cold. Brooke wore cream-colored slacks and a fitted camel coat, polished and effortless as always. Her blonde hair moved perfectly in the wind, while Iva stood there in sneakers with frosting on her sleeve. For one horrible second, nobody moved. Then Shawn smiled too casually. "Sorry we're late," he announced. "Work emergency." Brooke lifted a glossy gift bag. "But we made it. Again." Lily stopped running halfway across the driveway, confused now instead of excited. Iva walked forward slowly. "You brought her here." Shawn lowered his voice immediately. "Don't do this right now. This is our daughter's birthday party, and Brooke helped save a client account today. We came straight from work." Brooke gave a tight smile. "I hope that's okay?" No, it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. But 20 children and their parents stood 10 feet away, pretending not to stare. So Iva swallowed the humiliation burning through her throat. "Of course," she said mechanically. Brooke crouched beside Lily. Happy birthday, I heard you love horses. Lily nodded uncertainly. Brooke handed her the gift bag. Inside sat an expensive American Girl doll wearing a custom riding outfit. Patricia gasped approvingly. Oh my goodness, Brooke, this is gorgeous. Iva saw it immediately. The subtle replacement. Brooke arriving polished and generous, while Iva looked exhausted and overwhelmed. The fun woman, the ambitious woman, the woman Shawn respected. Throughout the party, Brooke somehow remained near Shawn constantly, laughing beside him, finishing his sentences, touching his arm lightly when she spoke. And Shawn looked alive around her. That was the worst part. Not secretive, not guilty, alive. Meanwhile, Iva ran around cleaning spills, helping children in the bathroom, reheating food trays, and trying desperately to keep the party together. At one point, she carried fresh lemonade outside just in time to hear Patricia speaking quietly to Brooke near the patio. You understand Shawn's world? Patricia said warmly. That matters. Brooke smiled modestly. He's very driven. Patricia glanced toward Iva across the yard. Some women just aren't built for ambitious men. The words punched straight through Iva's chest. She nearly dropped the tray. Brooke noticed her first. Awkwardness flickered across her face for barely a second before she masked it again. Iva turned away immediately, because if she stayed there one more moment, she might completely fall apart in front of everyone. Inside the kitchen, she gripped the counter hard enough for her knuckles to ache. Her reflection in the window looked pale and tired. Suddenly, Shawn appeared behind her. What's your problem now? Iva stared at him in disbelief. My problem. You've been acting cold since we got here. You brought your mistress to our daughter's birthday. Shawn's jaw tightened instantly. She is not my mistress. Then why does she act more comfortable beside you than I do? That's your insecurity talking. Iva laughed bitterly. Insecurity? Her voice cracked. You humiliate me constantly and call it insecurity when I react. Shawn stepped closer. You know what's exhausting? Coming home every day to someone who's always unhappy. Iva felt tears sting her eyes instantly. I'm unhappy because my husband barely sees me anymore. That's not my fault. No, she whispered. Then whose is it? Before Shawn could answer, Lily's voice echoed from the backyard. Cake time. Shawn immediately walked away without finishing the conversation. Of course he did. Outside, everyone gathered around the table, singing happy birthday, while Lily beamed under pink decorations and flickering candles. Iva stood beside her daughter, smiling for pictures. Shawn stood on Lily's other side. Brooke stood close behind him. Too close. Then in the middle of the singing, Lily looked up innocently and asked the question that shattered the entire afternoon. Daddy Shawn smiled automatically. Yes, sweetheart. Lily pointed toward Brooke. Why do you smile at the shiny lady more than Mommy's silence crashed across the backyard? Actual silence. Several adults looked away instantly. One mother nearly choked on her drink. Patricia froze. Brooke's face drained of color. And Shawn looked furious. Not ashamed. Furious. Iva felt every eye turn toward her. Lily looked confused, not malicious. Just observant in the brutal way children often were. Shawn forced a laugh too loudly. That's enough, Lily. But you do, she insisted softly. Iva saw the exact moment humiliation turned into rage inside Shawn. Later, after guests began leaving Shawn cornered, Iva inside the kitchen. This is your fault. Iva stared at him in disbelief. You think I told our 5-year-old to say that you poisoned the kids against me? The accusation was so absurd, Iva almost laughed. Instead, she whispered, Children notice who loves their mother. Shawn's expression darkened. You're unbelievable. No, Iva said quietly. I'm finally paying attention. That night, after everyone finally left and the house sat wrecked with wrapping paper and half-deflated balloons, Iva opened Shawn's laptop to print party photos for Lily's scrapbook. The browser was already open. At first, she barely looked. Then one search caught her eye. Best divorce attorneys in Chicago. Her blood turned cold. Below it, how to protect assets before divorce. Primary custody strategies for fathers. How to reduce spousal support payments. Eva stopped breathing. The room around her blurred slightly. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't emotional distance. Shawn was planning. Planning a future without her. And judging by the searches on that screen, he was planning to leave her with nothing. Eva did not sleep that night. She sat alone in the dark kitchen, while the glow from Shawn's laptop still burned in her memory, like a warning siren she could no longer ignore. Best divorce attorneys in Chicago. How to protect assets before divorce. How to reduce spousal support payments. The words replayed over and over in her mind while the rest of the house slept upstairs. Her husband was preparing to leave her, not carefully, strategically, and somehow that hurt even more. Because affairs could be explained away with weakness, selfishness, lust, ego. But planning. Planning meant Shawn had looked at her, the woman who raised his children, folded his shirts, kept his entire life functioning, and calmly decided how little he could leave her with when he walked away. Around 2 in the morning, Iva opened her laptop. At first, she only stared at the search bar. Her hands trembled slightly. Part of her still felt guilty, even thinking about fighting back. That was what years inside a marriage like this did to women. It trained them to protect everyone except themselves. Finally, she typed "family lawyers near me." Hundreds of names appeared instantly. Eva almost closed the computer. Then she remembered Lily's voice at the birthday party. Why do you smile at the shiny lady more than mommy children noticed everything? If she stayed passive, if she kept pretending, what exactly would her daughters learn about love? What would Owen learn about being a man? That question steadied her. An hour later, after reading reviews until her eyes blurred, Iva scheduled a consultation with a family attorney named Lauren Miller. The appointment was for Thursday morning. She told Shawn she had a dentist appointment. He barely looked up from his phone. Okay, that was all. No curiosity, no concern, no interest in her life whatsoever. Thursday arrived gray and rainy. Eva dropped Owen and Lily at school, left Grace at a temporary daycare center, and drove downtown with both hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to ache. Her stomach churned the entire drive. She felt ridiculous, dramatic, disloyal. The office building sat inside one of Chicago's polished financial districts, all glass walls and quiet elevators. Eva almost turned around twice before reaching the reception desk. "Appointment for Iva Johnston," she said softly. The receptionist smiled kindly. "Lauren will be right with you." 5 minutes later, a woman in her early 40s stepped into the waiting room wearing a navy suit and low heels. Lauren Miller looked calm, in the way women looked when they no longer needed to prove they belonged in a room. "Eva," she asked warmly. Inside Lauren's office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The room smelled faintly like coffee and expensive paper. Eva sat stiffly on the leather chair, clutching her purse in both hands. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Lauren said gently, "Why don't you start wherever you can?" And something inside Iva broke open. Not dramatically, quietly. The way exhaustion finally collapses after carrying too much for too long. She told Lauren everything. The affair, the comments, the spreadsheet on the refrigerator, the hidden bank account, the searches on Shawn's laptop, the years of staying home, the fear that she had no income, no leverage, no identity outside motherhood anymore. By the end, Iva's voice had turned raw. "I know this sounds pathetic," she whispered, "but I don't even know what I'm entitled to. Everything's in his name." Lauren leaned back slightly. "It doesn't sound pathetic." Iva stared at the carpet. "I haven't worked in 7 years. You worked," Lauren corrected immediately. The words hit Iva so hard she looked up. Lauren continued calmly. "You raised 3 children, managed a household, supported your husband's career. That is labor, Iva. Unpaid labor is still labor." Iva felt tears burn unexpectedly behind her eyes. No one had ever said it like that before. Not Shawn, not Patricia, not even herself. Lauren opened a yellow legal pad. Tell me about the hidden account. Eva explained what she found. Lauren's expression sharpened slightly. And the search is about asset protection? Yes. Did you take pictures? Eva hesitated. No? That's okay. Start now. Lauren's tone remained calm but direct. From this moment forward, you document everything. Something shifted inside Iva at those words. Everything. Lauren began listing things methodically: bank statements, emails, texts, calendars, school records, doctor appointments, evidence of caregiving, evidence of Shawn's absences, financial transfers, anything involving Brooke Caldwell. Do you have proof of your daily responsibilities? Lauren asked. For the first time in weeks, Iva almost smiled faintly. I made lists. Lauren looked up. What kind of lists? I wrote down everything I do every day. Can I see them? Iva pulled folded pages carefully from her purse. Lauren spent several minutes reading silently. As she turned page after page, her eyebrows lifted slightly. Finally, she looked back at Iva. These are excellent. Iva blinked in surprise. Excellent. They establish patterns, consistency, labor distribution, childcare involvement. Lauren tapped the pages lightly. Most people don't think to document invisible work until it's too late. Invisible work. That phrase settled heavily in Iva's chest. Lauren continued. Shawn Johnston may believe being the sole paycheck makes him untouchable. Courts don't always see it that way. For the first time since the birthday party, Iva felt something unfamiliar. Not hope exactly, but possibility. Lauren referred her to a forensic accountant named Ethan Brooks to review suspicious financial activity. Then, before the meeting ended, Lauren asked one final question. Do you have emotional support? Iva almost laughed. I have children. Lauren smiled knowingly. That's not the same thing. The truth of that nearly shattered her. Later that afternoon, sitting alone in her car outside the office building, Eva stared at her contacts list for a long time before finally pressing one name she had not called in nearly 4 years. Natalie Reed, her former coworker, former best friend, the woman who once knew her before motherhood swallowed every visible part of her identity. Natalie answered on the second ring. Eva, just hearing warmth in someone's voice, nearly made her cry. They met at a coffee shop that evening. Natalie looked almost exactly the same: sharp eyes, messy dark curls, oversized coats that somehow always looked stylish instead of exhausted. The moment Iva sat down, Natalie frowned. You look like you've been carrying the world. Eva let out a shaky laugh. Feels accurate. For 2 hours they talked. Really talked. About Shawn, about Brooke, about losing herself, about fear. Natalie listened without judgment. Then finally she asked quietly, Do you know what's crazy? What? You still talk about yourself like you disappeared. But Eva, the woman I knew, is still there. Eva looked down at her untouched coffee. I don't even know who that woman was anymore. Yes, you do. Natalie leaned forward. You organized million-dollar events while managing impossible clients and impossible timelines. You were brilliant under pressure. Eva shook her head weakly. That was years ago. No, Natalie corrected gently. That was before someone convinced you your only value was serving him. Silence filled the space between them, and for the first time in years, Iva allowed herself to imagine something dangerous, a future where she existed outside Shawn Johnston's approval. That night, after putting the children to bed, Iva sat at the kitchen table again, but this time felt different, not smaller, sharper. She plugged in a small external drive Lauren recommended. Then she began copying everything: bank statements, photos, texts, calendars, documents, proof. For years, Shawn had underestimated her because she stayed quiet. He mistook gentleness for weakness, dependence for stupidity, loyalty for blindness. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Shawn was home. Eva quickly minimized the files. A few minutes later, Shawn entered the kitchen, loosening his tie. "You were out late," he said casually. "I had errands." He nodded distractedly and reached into the refrigerator for water. Then his phone buzzed. Brooke flashed briefly across the screen. Shawn smiled before he could stop himself. And for the first time, Iva did not feel shattered watching it. She felt awake. 2 weeks later, while the children ate pancakes before school, Shawn finally placed divorce papers onto the kitchen island. "I think it's time we make this official." But what Shawn did not know was that Iva Johnston had already begun preparing for war. The divorce papers sat between the syrup bottle and Lily's half-eaten pancakes, like something poisonous disguised as ordinary. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, soft and golden, touching the marble countertops Iva used to think symbolized stability. Now they looked cold. Shawn stood at the kitchen island in an expensive charcoal suit, one hand resting casually beside the stack of documents like he was dropping off insurance paperwork instead of detonating a family. "I think it's time we make this official," he repeated. His voice was calm, too calm, like he had rehearsed this moment. Owen looked up first. "What's that adult paperwork?" Shawn answered quickly. Lily frowned. Why does Mommy look scared? Iva had not even realized her face changed. Grace banged a spoon against her high-chair tray, oblivious to the tension thickening the room. Eva stared down at the papers. Johnston versus Johnston. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words blurred briefly before her vision steadied again. She had known this was coming. Still knowing did not stop it from hurting. Shawn pulled out a chair and sat down, like this was a business meeting. "I want to keep things civil," he said. "That'll be better for everyone." Everyone. Interesting word, because nothing about this felt designed to protect anyone except him. Slowly, Iva opened the first page. Her chest tightened immediately. Primary residential custody requested by Shawn Johnston. Limited spousal support consideration due to voluntary unemployment. Recommendation to sell marital property and divide assets. Voluntary unemployment. The phrase pulsed in her brain like an insult. 7 years of unpaid labor reduced to 2 words. Lily looked nervously between them. Mommy Iva forced herself to breathe. "It's okay, sweetheart." It was not okay. Not even close. Shawn leaned back in his chair. "I spoke to a very good attorney. We're trying to avoid unnecessary conflict." Iva looked up sharply. Unnecessary conflict. As though humiliating her, cheating on her hiding money, and planning her financial destruction were somehow reasonable. Owen's small face tightened. "Are you getting divorced?" The directness of the question sliced through the room. Shawn sighed heavily, like the situation itself inconvenienced him. Buddy, sometimes adults decide they're happier apart. Lily's eyes immediately filled with tears. "But we're a family." Iva felt something physically ache inside her chest. Because unlike Shawn, the children still believed love should mean staying. Shawn stood abruptly. "Kids, why don't you head upstairs and finish getting ready for school?" "But now, Lily." His sharper tones startled her into silence. Owen quietly took his sister's hand and guided her upstairs, while Grace continued hitting her spoon against the tray. The moment the children disappeared, the atmosphere changed completely. Shawn exhaled. "Look, I know this is emotional." "Emotional?" Eva laughed once in disbelief. "You served me divorce papers at breakfast? You knew this wasn't working." "No," she said quietly. "I knew you stopped trying." Shawn rubbed a hand across his jaw, already irritated. "I'm not doing this with guilt and drama." "No," Eva stared at him. "Then what are you doing?" "I'm being realistic." Realistic. Another cold corporate word replacing accountability. Eva flipped through more pages. Her hands started trembling again when she reached the custody section. "You're asking for primary custody." Shawn's expression hardened slightly. "I have concerns about your emotional stability lately." For a second, she genuinely thought she misheard him. "My emotional stability." You've become increasingly reactive, paranoid, and withdrawn. The gaslighting was so aggressive, it almost impressed her. You cheated on me. I did not cheat on you. You brought Brooke to our daughter's birthday party. She's a coworker. She wrote lipstick messages to you. Shawn's jaw flexed. You've built this entire fantasy in your head because you're unhappy with yourself. There it was again. The same manipulation, the same strategy. Twist reality until she doubted her own memory. But this time, something inside Iva remained strangely steady, because Lauren Miller had already warned her. Men like Shawn survive by controlling the narrative. And suddenly, Eva saw the papers differently, not as truth, as strategy. Shawn walked toward the coffee machine. I'm trying to be fair here. Iva almost laughed. Fair. The man who hid money and researched how to avoid paying support wanted credit for fairness. You called me voluntarily unemployed. Shawn shrugged lightly. Well, technically you chose not to work. The sentence landed exactly where he intended, at the center of every insecurity he had spent years building inside her. Eva looked around the kitchen slowly. The clean counters, the organized lunch containers, the school calendar she maintained, the medicine drawer alphabetized for the children, the home that functioned because she made it function. Then she looked back at Shawn. And who made your life possible while you built your career? Shawn gave her a tired look. Oh my God, Iva. You stayed home. The dismissal in his voice nearly shattered something ancient inside her. Stayed home? As if she had spent 7 years relaxing. As if motherhood was leisure. As if carrying the emotional, physical, and logistical weight of an entire household was somehow not work because no paycheck came with it. Shawn poured coffee into a travel mug. You'll be okay, he said casually. You're smart. You'll figure something out. The cruelty of that sentence was almost breathtaking, because it arrived after years of isolating her financially, professionally, and emotionally. He had helped dismantle her independence. Now he spoke as though she failed to maintain it alone. You already have somewhere to stay, Iva asked quietly. Shawn paused, briefly. Too briefly. I'll probably split time between places for now. Places. Plural, meaning Brooke. Of course. You planned this for a while, didn't you? Shawn avoided her eyes for the first time all morning. That's not important. It was the most important thing in the world. Because while she fought to save the marriage, Shawn had quietly been building exits. Then he delivered the sentence that finally changed everything. You can stay in the guest room until things settle down. Iva stared at him slowly. The guest room. In the house she maintained. With the children she raised. While he played husband only when convenient. Something cold moved through her veins. Not panic. Clarity. Shawn picked up his briefcase. I have meetings all afternoon. My attorney's information is in the packet. He started toward the door, then stopped. I really hope you don't make this ugly. Eva almost smiled at that. Ugly. As if betrayal only became unacceptable once the betrayed person stopped being quiet about it. Shawn opened the front door. I'll be home late. Of course he would. The door shut behind him. Silence swallowed the kitchen instantly. For several seconds, Iva simply stood there staring at the divorce papers. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Lauren Miller? Lauren checking in? Did he file? Iva looked down at the stack of papers again. Then another realization hit her. Shawn thought she was alone. He thought he was ahead. He thought she would panic, beg, collapse. Slowly, Iva typed back. Eva, yes. Eva. He served me this morning in front of the kids. Lauren. I'm sorry. Lauren, send me every page immediately. Lauren and Iva. Lauren, breathe. He just made his first major mistake. Eva read that message 3 times. Then she looked at the kitchen around her one more time. The room where she had spent years shrinking herself to keep peace. The room where Shawn believed he had finally won. For the first time in a very long time, Iva Johnston did not feel powerless sitting there. She felt angry. and anger she was beginning to understand could become fuel. Lauren Miller's office smelled like coffee printer ink and controlled destruction. That was how Iva thought of it now. Controlled destruction. Because unlike Shawn's cold, calculated cruelty, Lauren dismantled people carefully with evidence timelines and truth sharpened into strategy. 2 days after the divorce papers arrived, Eva sat across from Lauren at a polished conference table while rain streaked down the windows behind them. Stacks of documents covered nearly every surface: bank statements, school records, calendars, medical forms, copies of Shawn's filings. For the first time in years, Iva's invisible life existed physically in front of someone else. Lauren flipped through the divorce petition again, marking sections with sticky tabs. Then she looked up. "Your husband made a mistake." Iva exhaled shakily. "You said that before." "What does it mean?" Lauren leaned back slightly. "It means Shawn Johnston is arrogant." The bluntness almost startled a laugh out of Iva. Lauren continued. "He filed this case assuming you would panic settle quickly and accept whatever narrative he created." Iva stared down at the paperwork. "He says I'm voluntarily unemployed." "Yes," Lauren said calmly. And then 5 pages later, he requests primary custody, despite admitting you've been the children's primary caregiver for 7 years. Eva frowned slightly. So, so those two claims contradict each other. Lauren slid the papers across the table. "He wants the court to believe you do nothing while simultaneously arguing that children's lives revolve around your daily involvement." For the first time, Iva saw it. The holes, the arrogance, the assumption that nobody would examine the details because Shawn sounded confident enough saying them. Lauren tapped another section. He also submitted incomplete financial disclosures. Eva's stomach tightened instantly. The hidden account. Possibly more than one. Fear flashed cold through her chest. How bad is that Lauren's expression remained composed? Potentially very bad for him. The words settled heavily between them. Not for them. For him. Eva was still getting used to the idea that Shawn might not actually control everything. A knock sounded at the conference room door. A tall man carrying a laptop entered. "Ethan Brooks," he said warmly, extending a hand. "Forensic accountant." Iva shook it nervously. Ethan sat beside Lauren and opened several spreadsheets. "I reviewed the statements you brought," he explained. "There are patterns worth discussing." Patterns. Another strange relief. Because patterns meant this was real. Not paranoia, not emotional instability. Real. Ethan pulled up transaction histories. "Your husband appears to have redirected portions of annual bonuses into a secondary account over the last 18 months. Eva's mouth went dry. "How much?" Ethan named a number so large it made her physically dizzy. Her mind immediately jumped to every moment Shawn criticized grocery bills, every moment she bought cheaper shoes, every time she apologized for needing anything. Meanwhile, he had been quietly moving money where she could not see it. Lauren watched her carefully. "You okay?" "No," Iva admitted honestly. That honesty felt unfamiliar too. Ethan continued gently. "There's more." He pointed towards several recurring transfers. "See this entity. Caldwell Creative Consulting, LLC." Eva stared at the screen. Her pulse began pounding. "Caldwell." Ethan nodded. "Does that name mean something to you, Brooke?" Of course. Of course it was Brooke. Iva suddenly remembered the expensive apartment Brooke casually mentioned during the birthday party. The designer coats, the effortless luxury, all while Shawn lectured Iva about spending. Lauren's eyes sharpened immediately. "How certain are we these transfers relate to Brooke Caldwell?" "Not fully yet," Ethan answered, "but the timing aligns with the affair allegations and hidden asset behavior." Affair allegations. The phrase made Iva flinch, because somehow hearing her marriage described in legal language made it feel even more broken. Lauren closed the folder slowly. "This changes strategy." Iva looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means Shawn may have crossed from selfish husband into financial misconduct territory." The room suddenly felt colder. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Iva whispered the question haunting her most. What if he takes the kids? Lauren answered instantly. He won't. The certainty in her voice nearly made Iva cry. Lauren continued. Iva courts care about consistency, stability, caregiving history. She gestured toward the mountain of records, and you documented everything. The lists. The endless lists she wrote while feeling invisible. Suddenly they mattered. Not emotionally, legally. That realization almost overwhelmed her. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. Shawn. Of course. Lauren nodded toward it. Go ahead. Iva opened the text slowly. Shawn. I really hope you're not trying to turn this into a war. Shawn. The kids deserve better than that. Shawn. Don't let people manipulate you into making emotional decisions. Iva stared at the screen. Even now. Even after cheating, lying, hiding money, and blindsiding her with divorce papers, he still framed himself as the reasonable one. Lauren read the messages over Iva's shoulder. Classic. What control language? Lauren folded her arms. Notice how he positions himself as calm and you as emotional. Iva looked down again. She hated how deeply Shawn's words still affected her. A few minutes later, another message arrived. Shawn, no judge is going to reward someone for staying home, Iva. The cruelty of it stole her breath. Lauren's expression hardened visibly. Save everything. I already have. Good. For the next 2 hours, they built timelines. School pickups, doctor appointments, parent-teacher conferences Shawn missed, bedtime routines, emergency room visits, daily caregiving patterns. As they worked, something strange happened inside Iva. Her shame slowly began transforming into clarity, because every document told the same story. She had carried the family. Not partially, completely. Late that afternoon, Lauren accompanied Iva to temporary custody mediation preparation. The mediation office occupied another floor in the same building, quieter and colder somehow. As they sat waiting, Iva watched sharply dressed attorneys move through hallways carrying expensive leather briefcases and controlled expressions. This was Shawn's world. Corporate, strategic, polished. For years he convinced her she could never survive inside it. Now she wondered if he simply never wanted her to realize she could. Lauren reviewed final notes. Shawn will likely perform. Iva looked confused. Perform? He'll present himself as rational, stable, successful, concerned for the children. Lauren's eyes lifted carefully. Men like your husband are very good at appearing credible. Iva swallowed hard. What if people believe him? Lauren leaned closer. Truth matters more than performance in the long run. The sentence settled somewhere deep inside her. Truth matters more than performance. Shawn had spent years performing success, performing devotion, performing fatherhood. Meanwhile, Iva had quietly lived the truth of the family every single day. The mediator called them in shortly afterward. Shawn already sat inside the conference room beside his attorney Marcus Hale. Expensive suit, perfect posture, calm expression. He looked at Iva with controlled disappointment, like she was a difficult employee making a simple process messy. Not once did he look guilty. Marcus smiled professionally. Mrs. Johnston. Lauren nodded curtly. The mediation began politely enough. Then Shawn started speaking. I've always provided stability financially, he explained smoothly. And while I appreciate everything Iva's done at home, I'm concerned she's become emotionally overwhelmed. Emotionally overwhelmed. Iva felt heat rise sharply into her chest. Marcus added gently, Mr. Johnston's work schedule has recently become more flexible as well. Lie. Absolute lie. Shawn barely attended school events before. Now suddenly, he wanted to appear available and devoted. Lauren remained calm. She slid several folders across the table. School records, she said evenly. Medical records. Emergency contacts. Caregiving schedules. The mediator opened them slowly. Lauren continued. These documents establish Mrs. Johnston as the primary parent in virtually every measurable category for 7 years. Shawn's jaw tightened slightly. Then Lauren added the sentence that changed the energy in the room completely. We also intend to investigate undisclosed marital assets and suspicious financial transfers. Silence. Marcus looked sharply towards Shawn, and for the very first time, Iva watched genuine panic flicker across her husband's face. The silence inside the mediation room turned sharp enough to cut. Shawn recovered first. Of course he did. Men like Shawn Johnston built entire careers on recovering quickly. His expression smoothed back into calm professionalism while Marcus Hale adjusted his tie and leaned forward carefully. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for any financial discrepancies, Marcus said evenly. Lauren Miller did not blink. I'm sure there is, she replied, which is why we're requesting full disclosure. The mediator, Karen Walsh, glanced between both legal teams while jotting notes onto a yellow legal pad. Eva sat perfectly still beside Lauren, but inside her pulse thundered violently. For years, Shawn had controlled every emotional conversation in their marriage simply by sounding calmer than she did. Now someone else was finally forcing him to answer questions instead of changing the subject. It was strange how powerful that felt. Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on custody arrangements today. Translation: move away from the money. Move away from the lies. Move away from the panic flickering behind Shawn's eyes. Lauren folded her hands calmly. Custody is exactly why financial honesty matters. Karen nodded slightly. That's fair. Shawn's jaw tightened. Ivan noticed immediately. He hated losing control of rooms, especially rooms full of professionals. Marcus shifted strategy quickly. Mr. Johnston's primary concern is stability for the children. Eva almost laughed out loud. Stability? The man who missed birthdays, parent-teacher, conferences, pediatric appointments, and bedtime routines was suddenly campaigning as Father of the Year. Lauren slid another folder across the table. Excellent, she said smoothly. Then let's discuss stability. Karen opened the folder. Inside were school attendance logs, emergency contact forms, pediatric records, daycare schedules, and extracurricular calendars. Every page told the same story. Eva. Eva signed the forms. Eva answered emergency calls. Eva attended appointments. Eva picked up sick children. Eva coordinated schedules. Eva handled life. Karen looked up slowly. Mr. Johnston, it appears Mrs. Johnston has been the children's primary caregiver in nearly all documented areas. Shawn gave a controlled nod. She's had more availability? Availability? Iva stared at him in disbelief, as though her labor existed because she magically had extra time instead of sacrificing her career to create that time. Lauren spoke before Iva could. Availability created by mutual marital decisions benefiting Mr. Johnston's professional advancement. Marcus forced a tight smile. No one is denying Mrs. Johnston cared for the children. The sentence irritated Iva instantly. Cared for. Such a soft little phrase for years of emotional and physical exhaustion. Lauren opened another binder. I think perhaps we should quantify that care. Shawn visibly stiffened. Karen adjusted her glasses. Lauren continued calmly. Full-time childcare for 3 children in Chicago averages substantial annual cost. Add household management, transportation, scheduling meal preparation, educational support, and emotional labor. Marcus interrupted immediately. Emotional labor is subjective. Lauren looked directly at him. Not when one parent manages nearly every invisible function of the household. The room quieted again. Eva watched Shawn closely. He looked irritated now, not confident, irritated, because the conversation was happening in numbers instead of feelings, and numbers were harder to gaslight. Lauren pulled out printed pages from Iva's handwritten daily lists. Karen studied them carefully. Wake-up times, meal schedules, medication logs, homework support, laundry, cleaning, transportation. Night terrors soothed at 2 a.m. School projects completed. Dentist appointments scheduled. 7 years of invisible work documented, line by line. Karen looked genuinely surprised. These were kept consistently. Yes, Lauren answered. Mrs. Johnston began documenting responsibilities months ago. Shawn finally spoke sharply. So now keeping a to-do list makes her some kind of martyr. The cruelty in his tone filled the room instantly. Karen's expression shifted slightly. And for the first time, Iva realized something important. Shawn's arrogance sounded much uglier outside their kitchen. Lauren remained calm. No, she said evenly, but dismissing unpaid domestic labor as meaningless tends to reflect poorly in family court. Marcus touched Shawn's arm briefly, a warning to stay composed. But Shawn was unraveling now. I worked 80-hour weeks to provide for my family, he snapped. That house exists because of me. Eva felt old pain rise instinctively. For years, sentences like that crushed her immediately. Now they just sounded incomplete, because the truth sat directly in front of everyone. That house also existed because someone else maintained every inch of life inside it. Karen leaned forward carefully. Mr. Johnston, no one is disputing your financial contribution. Shawn laughed bitterly. Seems like everyone's disputing it. Lauren's voice sharpened slightly for the first time. No, Mr. Johnston. We're disputing your belief that financial contribution is the only contribution. Silence. Pure silence. Eva felt something shift deep inside her chest, because for years she tried explaining her worth emotionally. Lauren was explaining it structurally, legally, objectively, and somehow that hurt less. Marcus attempted another redirect. Perhaps we should discuss settlement options. Of course, because Shawn wanted this handled quietly before deeper investigation began. Lauren nodded once. We're open to discussing equitable settlement after complete financial disclosure. Shawn scoffed. This is becoming ridiculous. Karen looked directly at him. What specifically feels ridiculous? The question landed harder than anyone expected. Shawn hesitated. And in that hesitation, Iva saw it. He was no longer fully certain people believed him. His power had always depended on certainty. Lauren calmly opened another document. Let's discuss Caldwell Creative Consulting, LLC. The temperature in the room seemed to drop instantly. Marcus turned sharply toward Shawn. You didn't mention this. Shawn's face hardened. It's consulting work. Lauren slid transfer records across the table. Substantial consulting work. Karen scanned the pages silently. Transfer after transfer. Large amounts. Repeated patterns. Shawn crossed his arms defensively. I'm allowed to invest professionally. Lauren nodded. Absolutely. But marital funds used during an active affair relationship create concerns. Marcus immediately interjected. There's no proof of an affair. Eva almost spoke. Instead, Lauren did it for her. We have witness timelines, communication records, and overlapping financial behavior. Shawn's eyes snapped toward Iva instantly. Cold. Furious. Accusing. The same look that used to make her shrink automatically. This time she held his gaze. And something incredible happened. She did not feel afraid. She felt done. Karen closed the financial folder slowly. I strongly advise full transparency moving forward, she said carefully. The mediator's tone had changed. More serious now, more cautious. Because this was no longer just a difficult divorce. It was beginning to look strategic, manipulative, potentially deceptive. Shawn stood abruptly. I need a minute. Marcus followed him quickly out of the room. The moment the door closed, Iva exhaled shakily, for what felt like the first time in hours. Her entire body trembled with adrenaline. Lauren handed her bottled water. You okay? Iva nodded weakly. I think so. Karen studied her quietly. You documented your life very thoroughly. Eva looked down at her hands. I thought I was losing my mind. The confession slipped out before she could stop it. Karen's face softened slightly. That happens more often than you'd think. Tears burned suddenly behind Iva's eyes, not because she felt weak, because someone finally understood. A few minutes later, the hallway outside erupted with muffled, angry voices. Shawn. Marcus. Too low to hear clearly, but tense enough that everyone inside noticed. Lauren leaned toward Iva slightly. He's panicking. Iva swallowed. How can you tell? Lauren gave a small, knowing smile. Because men who think they're winning don't storm out of mediation rooms. For the first time since Shawn placed divorce papers on the kitchen island, Iva believed that might actually be true. 3 days after mediation, Brooke Caldwell called Lauren Miller herself. Not Shawn, not Marcus Hale. Brooke. That alone told Iva everything she needed to know. People only stayed loyal to men like Shawn, while the image still looked profitable. The moment consequences appeared, everyone started protecting themselves first. Lauren called Iva immediately after receiving the voicemail. She wants to talk, Lauren said calmly. Iva sat at the kitchen island, gripping her coffee mug tightly, about what she claims she has information relevant to financial disclosures. Eva laughed once under her breath. Of course she does. Outside the kitchen windows, rain drizzled softly across the backyard, where Lily's birthday decorations had finally disappeared completely. The house looked cleaner now. Quieter, too. Shawn barely stayed there anymore. Some nights he returned after midnight, other nights, not at all. He stopped pretending to explain, and strangely, that hurt less than his lies had. When does she want to meet? Iva asked. This afternoon? Eva's stomach tightened instantly. I don't think I can sit across from her. You don't have to, Lauren said gently, but you should hear what she's offering. Offering. Interesting word. As though Brooke were handing over business documents instead of pieces of Iva's broken marriage. By 4 o'clock, Eva sat beside Lauren in a private conference room, while Brooke Caldwell entered 20 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream trench coat. Even now, Brooke looked polished, controlled, like a woman used to landing softly no matter how ugly the situation became. But up close, Iva noticed tiny cracks, dark circles beneath expensive makeup, tension in her jaw, nervousness she tried hard to hide. Brooke removed her sunglasses slowly. For one awkward second, neither woman spoke. This was the first time they had been alone together. No parties, no corporate dinners, no Shawn standing between them, manipulating reality. Just the wife and the woman who helped destroy the marriage. Brooke exhaled carefully. I know you hate me. Iva's voice came out surprisingly calm. I don't think about you enough to hate you. The lie sounded beautiful, even if it wasn't fully true yet. Brooke flinched slightly anyway. Lauren opened a legal pad. You said you had information. Brooke nodded. Yes. Then she reached into her designer bag and pulled out printed screenshots, text messages, bank confirmations, wire transfers. Iva's chest tightened immediately. Brooke slid the papers across the table, carefully, almost respectfully. Shawn transferred money through my consulting company. Lauren scanned the pages quickly. How much? Brooke named a number even higher than Ethan Brooks estimated before. Eva physically stopped breathing for a second. That amount of money could have covered years of childcare, college funds, family security. Meanwhile, Shawn made her feel guilty for buying a winter coat. Brooke looked directly at Iva for the first time. I didn't know he was hiding assets initially. Iva almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable how everyone involved suddenly wanted innocence once consequences appeared. Brooke continued quickly. He said the transfers were tax strategy and investment restructuring. Lauren's eyes narrowed. And when did you realize otherwise? Brooke hesitated. When he filed for divorce? Of course. Not when he cheated, not when he lied, not when he humiliated his wife publicly. Only when legal risk appeared. Iva studied Brooke quietly. For months she imagined this woman as untouchable, perfect, superior somehow. Now she just looked tired, human, scared. You knew he was married, Iva said softly. Brooke swallowed. Yes, and you still chose him. Brooke's eyes dropped. I thought he was unhappy. The sentence ignited something hot inside Iva. Unhappy. As if unhappiness excused betrayal. As if every exhausted mother in America had permission to cheat because marriage became difficult. Lauren interrupted before the conversation turned emotional. These screenshots show Mr. Johnston intentionally discussing pre-divorce financial transfers. Brooke nodded reluctantly. There's more. She handed over additional pages. Text from Shawn, detailed instructions. Move this before filing. Keep communication off company email. Temporary until settlement finalized. Eva stared at the words while nausea rolled through her stomach. This was not impulsive, not emotional, not a mistake. Shawn planned her destruction carefully. The realization hurt in an entirely new way. For years, she blamed herself for not being enough, pretty enough, ambitious enough, exciting enough. Meanwhile, Shawn had been calculating exit strategies like business transactions. Lauren looked up sharply. Why are you cooperating now? Brooke laughed bitterly. Because Shawn's pretending I made decisions independently. She crossed her arms tightly. And because his firm is starting to ask questions. There it was. The real fear. Not morality. Reputation. Corporate America only cared about ethics once scandals threatened profitability. Brooke continued quietly. He told me he was trapped in a dead marriage. Iva's face remained expressionless. Classic Shawn. Present himself as the victim while someone else carried all the damage. Brooke looked strangely uncomfortable now. He said you stopped caring about him years ago. That one hurt, because the truth was the exact opposite. Eva cared so much she disappeared trying to save him. Lauren organized the documents carefully into folders. These will be extremely important. Brooke nodded once, then more quietly, I never thought he'd actually try taking the kids from you. Eva finally looked directly at her. You thought he'd just destroy me financially. Instead, Brooke had no answer for that. Silence settled heavily across the room. Then Brooke whispered something unexpected. He talks about you constantly. Eva frowned slightly. What Brooke looked embarrassed now, not recently, before. Something shifted uneasily in Iva's chest. Brooke continued carefully. He used to brag about how perfect your house looked, how organized you were, how the kids adored you. Iva stared at her. Then why did he treat me like I was worthless? Brooke's expression softened with something dangerously close to pity, because some men only value what supports them privately. Once they stop needing nurturing emotionally, they start resenting the person who provided it. The sentence settled painfully deep, because it sounded true, too true. When the meeting finally ended, Brooke stood slowly. At the door, she paused. I know saying sorry means nothing. Eva looked at her calmly. You're right. Brooke nodded once and left. The room fell silent afterward. Lauren organized paperwork, while Iva sat motionless, staring at the empty chair Brooke had occupied moments earlier. Eventually, Lauren spoke. These messages are devastating for Shawn. Iva barely heard her, because her mind remained trapped inside one realization. Shawn never actually stopped seeing her value. He simply believed he was entitled to it. That hurt more than being invisible, being useful, useful enough to build his life, disposable enough to betray afterward. That evening, Patricia Johnston called. Of course she did. News traveled quickly through families built on appearances. Eva answered reluctantly while stirring pasta for the children. Patricia's voice came sharp immediately. What exactly are you trying to do to my son? Iva closed her eyes briefly. Hold him accountable. You're humiliating him. The hypocrisy nearly made Iva laugh. Humiliating him, not caring that he cheated, not caring he hid money, only caring that consequences existed publicly now. Patricia continued angrily. Marriage is hard, Iva. You don't destroy a man's life over mistakes. Mistakes. Such a gentle word for betrayal. Eva lowered the stove heat carefully before answering. No, Patricia. Misplacing car keys is a mistake. Silence. Then Iva said the sentence that had lived inside her for years. I spent 7 years cleaning up the emotional wreckage Shawn left behind, while everyone called him successful. Patricia inhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. No, Iva said quietly. I'm finally being honest. She hung up before Patricia could answer. Then she stood alone in the kitchen, breathing hard, while pasta water boiled softly behind her. Upstairs, Lily laughed at something Owen said. Grace babbled in her crib. Life continued, messy, tender, real. And for the first time, Iva realized something important. Shawn Johnston's greatest fear was never losing her love. It was losing the image she helped him maintain. The courtroom felt colder than Iva expected. Not physically, emotionally. Everything inside it seemed designed to strip people down to facts. Dark wood, gray walls, sharp fluorescent lighting. No room for softness, no room for denial either. Iva sat beside Lauren Miller at the petitioner's table, wearing a navy dress she bought on clearance 3 weeks earlier, after realizing she no longer needed Shawn's permission to spend money on herself. Her hands rested tightly together in her lap. Across the room, Shawn Johnston looked exactly the same as always. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect corporate mask. If someone walked into the courtroom without context, they would probably assume he was the reasonable one. That thought no longer terrified Iva the way it used to, because truth had weight now, and she carried proof. Judge Margaret Ellis entered precisely at 9 o'clock sharp. Everyone rose. The room settled quickly into tense silence once proceedings began. Marcus Hale stood first for Shawn. Your Honor, he began smoothly, Mr. Johnston has consistently provided financial stability for his family throughout the marriage. There it was again. Financial stability. Always the opening line, as though money automatically erased betrayal. Marcus continued calmly. While Mrs. Johnston certainly contributed as a homemaker, the evidence will show my client carried the overwhelming burden of maintaining the family's lifestyle. Lifestyle. Another carefully chosen word. Not family, and not partnership. Lifestyle. Iva felt Lauren shift slightly beside her, but remained silent. Marcus turned toward the judge again. Mr. Johnston simply seeks a fair and practical resolution. Judge Ellis nodded once. Thank you. Ms. Miller-Lauren rose smoothly. Unlike Marcus, she did not perform confidence theatrically. She simply inhabited it. Your Honor, Lauren said evenly, this case is not merely about finances. It is about the systematic erasure of unpaid labor inside a marriage. The room quieted instantly. Lauren continued. For 7 years, Mrs. Johnston raised 3 children, managed the household, supported her husband's professional advancement, and absorbed the invisible responsibilities required to sustain family life. Invisible responsibilities. Eva swallowed hard. Lauren's voice sharpened slightly. The respondent now attempts to characterize those contributions as meaningless because they were unpaid. Judge Ellis glanced toward Shawn briefly. Lauren turned a page. We will also demonstrate intentional concealment of marital assets prior to divorce filing. That got everyone's attention immediately. Even Shawn shifted slightly in his seat. Marcus stood quickly. Objection to characterization. Judge Ellis lifted a hand calmly. I'll allow the argument to proceed. Eva's pulse pounded harder. For the first time since the marriage began collapsing, Shawn looked uncertain. The first witness was Ethan Brooks. He explained the financial records carefully and methodically, while projected bank statements illuminated screens around the courtroom. Transfer dates, hidden accounts, consulting payments, bonus diversions. Every number felt like another crack, splitting open the image Shawn spent years building. Marcus tried minimizing the transfers. Professional consulting relationships are common in corporate finance. Ethan nodded calmly. Certainly. But concealment patterns immediately preceding divorce filings are also common. A few quiet murmurs spread through the gallery seating. Shawn's jaw tightened visibly. Then came the worst part. The text messages. Lauren displayed them one by one. Move this before filing. Keep communication off company email. Temporary until settlement finalized. Eva watched Shawn carefully while the messages appeared on screen. No shame, just anger. Anger that his private calculations were now public. Marcus attempted damage control quickly. These messages lack full conversational context. Lauren responded instantly. The context is asset concealment. Judge Ellis looked directly at Shawn. Mr. Johnston, did you disclose these accounts voluntarily in your initial filings? Shawn hesitated. Too long. No, Your Honor. That tiny pause damaged him more than any dramatic confession could have, because arrogance always believed it could survive details. Then Lauren called Iva to the stand. Her knees trembled walking forward. Not from fear exactly, from the surreal feeling of watching her entire life become evidence. After swearing in, she sat carefully beneath the courtroom lights while Lauren approached gently. Mrs. Johnston, how long were you married? 7 years. And during those 7 years, what was your primary role within the household? I took care of our children and managed the home. Lauren nodded. Can you describe what that involved? At first, Iva answered quietly. Meals, school schedules, medical appointments, laundry, cleaning, transportation, homework, bedtime routines. But as Lauren continued asking questions, the full reality emerged. Night fevers, panic attacks soothed, teacher meetings, speech evaluations for Lily when she struggled pronouncing certain words at age 4, emergency room visits, meal planning around Owen's allergies, Grace's sleep regressions, every invisible thing women carried without applause. Lauren finally placed Iva's handwritten lists into evidence. Did you create these records yourself? Yes. Why? Iva hesitated. The courtroom waited silently. Then she answered honestly. Because I started feeling like I was disappearing. Something shifted visibly in the room. Not pity. Recognition. Lauren approached slowly. Did Mr. Johnston ever describe your contributions as valuable? Iva looked toward Shawn automatically. He refused to meet her eyes. No. What language did he use instead? Iva swallowed hard. He said I stayed home. Lauren nodded once. Anything else? Silence stretched painfully. Then Iva forced herself to say it. He said I contributed nothing. The words echoed differently inside a courtroom. Harsher, crueler, more absurd. Lauren stepped back. No further questions. Marcus Hale approached next, and immediately Iva recognized Shawn's strategy in his attorney's tone. Polite, controlled, undermining. Mrs. Johnston, Marcus began smoothly. You chose to leave your career after your first child was born, correct? Yes. No one forced you. Iva glanced briefly toward Lauren before answering. No. Marcus nodded like he had scored a point. And during the marriage, Mr. Johnston financially supported the household. He earned the income? Yes. Marcus paced slowly. So your husband worked while you remained home with the children. The phrasing irritated her instantly. Remained home, like she lounged beside windows drinking coffee all day? Before Iva could answer, Marcus continued. And despite these alleged difficulties, you continued accepting financial support from Mr. Johnston throughout the marriage. There it was, the implication. Dependency, as though caregiving invalidated dignity. Iva looked directly at him. I accepted partnership. Marcus paused slightly, then continued. But you did not generate income. No, Iva answered steadily. I generated stability. Silence. Actual silence. Even Lauren looked surprised. Marcus recovered quickly. Mrs. Johnston, are you suggesting domestic tasks equal executive-level financial contribution? Eva thought about every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every invisible burden. Then she answered calmly. I'm suggesting my husband could not have built his career without someone carrying everything else. The courtroom went still again. Marcus stepped back slowly. No further questions. When Eva returned to her seat beside Lauren, her hands shook violently beneath the table. Lauren leaned closer. You did well? Iva barely heard her, because Shawn was staring at her now. Really staring. Not dismissively. Not arrogantly. Almost like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. And somehow that hurt too. Finally, near the end of proceedings, Shawn himself took the stand. Marcus guided him through polished testimony about career pressure, financial responsibility, and family expectations. Then Lauren stood for cross-examination. The atmosphere changed immediately. Lauren approached calmly. Mr. Johnston, did your wife raise your children during your marriage? Yes. Did she manage your household? Yes. Did her labor allow you to work extended hours and advance professionally? Shawn hesitated. Yes. Lauren nodded once, then asked the question quietly. So when you stated Mrs. Johnston contributed nothing, what exactly did you mean? The silence afterward felt endless. Shawn opened his mouth, closed it again, and for the first time since this began, he had absolutely nowhere left to hide. Shawn never answered Lauren's question directly. That was the moment Ivan knew he was losing, because Shawn Johnston always had answers. Smooth answers, corporate answers. Answers designed to sound intelligent enough that nobody looked too closely underneath them. But now sitting beneath the cold courtroom lights, with his own words circling around him like smoke, he hesitated. Lauren waited calmly. So when you stated Mrs. Johnston contributed nothing, she repeated evenly, what exactly did you mean? Shawn shifted in his seat. I meant financially. Lauren tilted her head slightly. Financial contribution is the only contribution you consider valuable. Marcus Hale stood immediately. Objection. Argumentative. Judge Ellis looked toward Lauren briefly. Sustained. Rephrase. Lauren nodded once, then she looked directly at Shawn. Would your career have progressed the same way if Mrs. Johnston had not assumed primary responsibility for the household and children? Another pause. This one longer. No, Shawn admitted finally. The word landed heavily across the courtroom. Lauren stepped back slightly. No further questions. Eva watched Shawn carefully as he left the witness stand. For the first time in 7 years, he looked smaller. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone had stripped away the performance he used to dominate every room. Closing arguments began later that afternoon. Marcus went first again, attempting to regain control of the narrative. Your Honor, he said smoothly, this is ultimately a marriage that deteriorated over time. Mr. Johnston acknowledges Mrs. Johnston's role within the family, but emotional grievances should not distort financial reality. Financial reality? There it was again, as if love, labor, and sacrifice only mattered once attached to a paycheck. Marcus continued. My client built a successful career through discipline and extraordinary professional pressure. He should not be punished for being the sole financial provider. Eva felt old anger flicker inside her. Punished. Interesting word. As though recognizing her value somehow victimized Shawn. Lauren stood slowly after Marcus finished. Unlike Marcus, she did not pace. She did not dramatize. She simply spoke clearly. Your Honor, no one is punishing Mr. Johnston for earning income. Her voice echoed steadily through the courtroom. We are asking this court to recognize that marriages are not sustained by paychecks alone. Silence settled instantly. Lauren continued. For 7 years, Mrs. Johnston performed the unpaid labor that allowed Mr. Johnston's professional life to flourish uninterrupted. She gestured toward the evidence binders stacked neatly on the table. She raised 3 children, managed the household, maintained schedules, medical care, education, emotional stability, transportation, nutrition, and daily operations for an entire family. Eva felt tears burn unexpectedly behind her eyes. Not from sadness, from hearing her life described accurately for the first time. Lauren's voice sharpened slightly. Mr. Johnston benefited from that labor every single day while simultaneously diminishing it. Judge Ellis remained expressionless but attentive. Lauren turned one final page. Then before filing for divorce, Mr. Johnston attempted to conceal marital assets while portraying Mrs. Johnston as voluntarily dependent and emotionally unstable. The room remained painfully still. Lauren looked directly toward the judge. Mrs. Johnston did not contribute nothing. A pause. She contributed everything that could not be measured until it was missing. The sentence hit Iva like a physical force. Because it was true. Painfully true. Court recessed for 2 hours before rulings. During that time, Iva sat beside Lauren in a quiet waiting room overlooking downtown Chicago. The city moved normally outside the windows. Traffic, people walking, business meetings, coffee shops, ordinary life continuing while hers balanced on the edge of something irreversible. Lauren handed her bottled water. You okay? Eva laughed softly under her breath. I honestly don't know. That was the truth. Part of her still felt like the terrified woman standing in the laundry room holding Brooke's lipstick note. Another part felt completely different now. Sharper. More awake. More dangerous. Her phone buzzed once. Natalie Reed. Natalie. Thinking about you today. Natalie. No matter what happens, you already won. Eva. It doesn't feel like winning. Natalie. That's because survival never feels glamorous while it's happening. Eva stared at the screen for a long moment. Then Lauren spoke quietly. You know what's interesting about men like Shawn? Iva looked up. What they genuinely believe maintaining financial power makes them morally superior. Eva thought about the spreadsheet on the refrigerator. My money? My house? My lifestyle. Lauren continued, but power built on someone else's invisible sacrifice tends to collapse once exposed. The words settled deeply inside her. Eventually, the bailiff called everyone back into the courtroom. Eva's pulse thundered violently as she sat down beside Lauren again. Across the room, Shawn avoided looking at her entirely now. Marcus whispered something urgently in his ear. Patricia Johnston sat behind Shawn, wearing stiff pearls and visible disapproval. Judge Ellis entered carrying several documents. Everyone rose, then sat again. The courtroom became completely silent. Judge Ellis adjusted her glasses carefully before speaking. This court has reviewed the financial disclosures, testimony, caregiving records, and evidence submitted by both parties. Eva stopped breathing. Judge Ellis continued calmly. The evidence clearly establishes Mrs. Johnston as the children's primary caregiver throughout the marriage. A small tremor moved through Iva's hands beneath the table. Furthermore, Judge Ellis added, the court finds Mr. Johnston's initial financial disclosures incomplete and concerning. Shawn's face hardened immediately. Judge Ellis looked directly toward him, particularly in light of documented transfers occurring prior to divorce proceedings. Marcus shifted uncomfortably beside Shawn. Then came the sentence that changed everything. This court does not confuse unpaid with worthless. Silence. Absolute silence. Eva felt tears instantly fill her eyes. Judge Ellis continued. Domestic labor, caregiving, emotional management, and household administration carry measurable value even when performed without salary. For 7 years, Iva had begged emotionally to be seen. Now the truth stood publicly in legal language no one could dismiss. Judge Ellis reviewed the rulings one by one. Primary residential custody awarded to Iva. Substantial child support obligations assigned to Shawn. Temporary spousal support approved based on career sacrifice and dependency created during marriage. Mandatory financial review of hidden assets and transferred marital funds. Restrictions regarding sale of the marital home until final settlement. Every ruling chipped away another piece of Shawn's certainty. By the end, he looked furious. Not devastated. Furious. Because consequences always offended people who believed themselves entitled to avoid them. When proceedings finally adjourned, the courtroom erupted into quiet movement. Lawyers gathering files, chairs scraping softly, people whispering. Eva sat frozen. Lauren squeezed her arm gently. You did it? Eva shook her head faintly. No, she whispered. I survived it. Across the room, Shawn stormed toward them before Marcus could stop him. His face burned red with humiliation. You happy now? He snapped at Iva. Lauren immediately stepped between them slightly. Shawn ignored her. You ruined everything. The old version of Iva would have collapsed under those words instantly, would have apologized, would have tried to soothe him. Instead, she looked directly into his eyes and saw him clearly for the first time. Not powerful, not superior. Just a man furious that the woman he underestimated finally stopped protecting him from himself. Slowly, Eva stood. No, Shawn, she said quietly. Her voice did not shake. I just stopped helping you hide who you are. Shawn stared at her in stunned silence. Behind him, Patricia looked horrified. Marcus looked exhausted. And for the first time in years, Iva Johnston no longer felt small standing beside her husband. She felt free. The first morning Shawn's car was gone from the driveway, Iva stood at the kitchen window longer than necessary. The silence felt unfamiliar. Not empty, just different. For years, mornings in the Johnston house revolved around Shawn's moods. Whether he was stressed, whether he was irritated, whether he was running late, whether the coffee was hot enough, the shirt pressed correctly, the children quiet enough. Now the house breathed differently. Owen ate cereal while reading at the table. Lily hummed softly to herself while dressing Grace's stuffed rabbit in doll clothes. No one flinched when a spoon dropped. No one checked the clock nervously before footsteps entered the kitchen. Peace, Iva realized, was much quieter than fear. 3 months passed slowly after the court ruling. Not easy months, just honest ones. The legal process continued in the background. Financial audits, custody schedules, negotiations, but emotionally, something inside Iva had already crossed a line she could never uncross again. She no longer wanted Shawn back. That realization arrived gradually. Not dramatically. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon while folding towels. She simply noticed she no longer waited for his approval in her own mind. No longer rehearsed explanations before buying groceries. No longer panicked when her phone buzzed. No longer measured her worth through his attention. Healing, she discovered, often looked boring before it looked beautiful. Natalie Reed became part of their lives again, almost immediately. She showed up with wine takeout and brutal honesty. You know what's funny, Natalie said one evening while helping Iva clean up after dinner? You still apologize every 5 minutes. Eva blinked. I do not. You literally apologized to the microwave yesterday. That made Iva laugh for the first time in weeks. A real laugh. The kind that startled her afterward because she forgot her body still knew how to make that sound. Natalie leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. You're coming back? Eva frowned slightly. What does that mean? The version of you that existed before survival became your entire personality. The words settled deeply inside her, because survival really had become her personality. Efficient, quiet, careful, exhausted. Always managing everyone else's emotions before her own. A few weeks later, Natalie convinced Iva to help organize a fundraising gala for a local children's literacy nonprofit. At least meet the board, Natalie insisted. They need someone organized. I haven't worked in years, so you've managed 3 children and a collapsing marriage. Corporate events will feel relaxing. Eva laughed nervously, but agreed anyway. The first planning meeting terrified her. The conference room downtown smelled like coffee and expensive perfume, and everyone else seemed polished, confident, successful. For the first 10 minutes, Eva barely spoke. Then someone mentioned scheduling conflicts with vendors, and instinct took over. Questions, timelines, backup plans, venue flow, guest experience, budget restructuring. By the end of the meeting, people were taking notes while she talked. One woman blinked at her in surprise. How long have you been in event planning? Iva hesitated. The old shame almost answered first. I used to. Instead, she said quietly, a long time. Driving home afterward, she cried at a red light. Not because she felt broken, because for 1 hour she remembered herself. Work came slowly after that. Small projects first. Birthday dinners, baby showers, private brunches. Nothing glamorous. But every completed event stitched another piece of her confidence back together. Meanwhile, the children changed too. That might have been the most heartbreaking part of all. Because once tension disappeared from the house, Iva realized how much they had been carrying silently. Owen stopped hovering protectively near Lily during arguments. Lily stopped asking if Mommy was sad every night before bed. Grace laughed easier now, bright toddler giggles filling rooms that once felt heavy. One night while tucking Lily into bed, her daughter whispered sleepily, "The house feels nicer now." Iva nearly broke apart right there beside the nightlight glow. Children always knew, even when adults pretended otherwise. Shawn, however, was not adjusting well. The financial investigation expanded. His firm quietly removed him from 2 major client accounts while reviewing internal concerns. Translation: scandal risk. Brooke Caldwell disappeared almost completely from his life after cooperating legally. According to rumors Natalie heard through mutual contacts, Brooke transferred to another consulting company across the city. Shawn's messages started becoming more frequent after that. At first, they sounded defensive. Shawn: "I hope you're happy with what this turned into, Shawn. The firm's treating me differently now." Then they shifted slowly. Less angry, more uncertain. Shawn Owens seemed upset after I dropped him off today. Shawn: "I don't know how to talk to him anymore." And eventually, Shawn: "I didn't realize how much you handled until I had to start doing it myself." That message sat unread for nearly an hour before Iva finally responded. Eva. That realization came very late. Nothing else, no comfort, no reassurance, no emotional labor, and strangely withholding it no longer made her feel cruel. It made her feel healthy. One Friday afternoon, Eva stood inside the ballroom of her first major independent event since the divorce began, a charity gala for the literacy nonprofit. White roses lined the centerpieces, gold candlelight reflected against crystal glasses. Staff moved efficiently through the room while a jazz quartet rehearsed softly near the stage. Everything looked elegant, intentional, alive. Natalie walked beside her holding a clipboard. "You know everyone here thinks you've been doing this consistently for years." Eva smiled faintly. "In a way I have, because motherhood had trained her for this too. Managing chaos, anticipating needs, holding emotional atmospheres together quietly. The difference now was simple. People respected her for it." Halfway through the evening, while checking final table placements near the ballroom entrance, Iva suddenly froze. Shawn stood near the doorway. For one terrible second, old anxiety flashed instinctively through her chest. Then she really looked at him. He appeared exhausted, not physically ruined, just diminished somehow, like someone stripped away the certainty he once wore constantly. He approached carefully. "You look—" Shawn paused. "Good." Iva nodded politely. "Thank you." For a moment, neither spoke. The ballroom buzzed warmly around them, while years of marriage stood silently between them. Finally, Shawn glanced around the room. "You did all this?" "Yes." Something painful crossed his face. Not jealousy exactly. Recognition. The kind that comes too late. "I forgot how good you were at this," he admitted quietly. Eva almost answered automatically. "You made me forget too." But she stayed silent, because some truths no longer needed explaining. Shawn looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. "Can we talk sometime?" There it was. Not dominance, not certainty. Request. Eva studied him carefully. The man she once built her entire world around now looked strangely unfamiliar. Not because he changed suddenly, because she finally saw him clearly. "I don't know," she answered honestly. Shawn nodded slowly, like he expected that. Then someone called Iva's name from across the ballroom. She turned instinctively toward the sound, and by the time she looked back, Shawn was already standing alone. The final divorce hearing lasted less than 40 minutes. After everything, the investigations, the mediation, the courtroom battles, the hidden accounts, the humiliation, Iva almost laughed at how brief the ending actually was. A marriage could consume years of a woman's life. Its funeral fit neatly between lunch appointments downtown. The settlement finalized on a bright October morning. Primary custody remained with Iva. The marital assets were divided more equitably after the financial review exposed Shawn's concealed transfers. Spousal support terms were adjusted heavily in her favor. The judge's final language remained clear and unflinching. Mrs. Johnston's unpaid domestic labor materially contributed to the family's financial and professional success. For years, Shawn reduced her life to nothing. Now that nothing existed permanently in legal record. When court adjourned, Lauren hugged her tightly outside the courtroom. "You're free," she whispered. Free. The word terrified Iva almost as much as it healed her, because freedom sounded beautiful until you realized it also meant responsibility. No husband to blame anymore. No marriage to hide inside anymore. Just herself, raw and rebuilding. That afternoon, instead of going home immediately, Iva drove alone to Lake Michigan. Cold wind swept across the shoreline, while gray waves crashed softly against the rocks. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and stood staring at the water for a long time. Her phone buzzed once. Shawn. Of course. She almost ignored it, then finally opened the message. Shawn. I never thought it would end like this. Shawn. I know that probably means nothing to you now. Shawn. But I really did love you once. Iva stared at the words while wind tangled her hair across her face. Once. Interesting word, because Shawn spoke about love like it expired naturally instead of something he slowly abandoned through entitlement and neglect. For several minutes, she said nothing. Then she typed carefully. Iva, I think you loved what I gave you. Iva? That's not the same thing. She pressed send before she could overthink it. No anger, no cruelty, just truth. And truth no longer needed screaming to be powerful. Over the next several months, life slowly transformed into something unrecognizable from the woman Iva used to be. Not perfect, just hers. She officially launched her own boutique event planning company in Chicago. Small at first. Intimate weddings, corporate dinners, fundraisers, private luxury events. But word spread quickly. Clients loved her calmness under pressure, her emotional intuition, the way she noticed details other planners missed. One bride cried after a reception setup and hugged Iva tightly. You made this feel safe, she whispered emotionally. That sentence stayed with her for days, because safety had become sacred now. At home, things changed too. The children adapted slowly but honestly. Owen became quieter for a while after the divorce finalized. One evening he asked softly during dinner, "Did Dad stop loving us?" The question nearly destroyed her. Eva put down her fork carefully. "No, baby," she said gently. "Adults can fail each other without failing their children." It was the kindest version of truth she could give him. Lily adjusted differently. She asked more questions about marriage, about love, about why people hurt each other. One night, while brushing Lily's hair before bed, her daughter suddenly whispered, "You smile more now." Eva froze. Lily continued innocently. "Before you smiled with your mouth. Now you smile with your eyes, too." That almost broke her completely, because children really had been watching all along, even the sadness she tried desperately to hide. As for Shawn, karma rarely arrived dramatically. It arrived quietly. Lonely apartments, microwave dinners, children less excited during custody exchanges, professional reputations shifting subtly after scandals, long silences where admiration used to exist. Natalie once described it perfectly over wine one evening. "Men like Shawn think they're losing a wife," she said, "but what they're actually losing is infrastructure." Iva laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. And it was true. Shawn lost the woman who managed birthdays' emotional rhythms, school calendars, grocery lists, social relationships, home stability, invisible logistics, and unconditional emotional support. He lost ease. Meanwhile, Iva gained herself back. About a year after the divorce, Shawn attended Owen's school orchestra performance. The auditorium buzzed with proud parents and winter coats, while children tuned instruments nervously on stage. Iva sat near the middle beside Lily and Grace. When Shawn arrived, he hesitated briefly before taking the empty seat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Owen stepped onto the stage carrying his violin. Shawn smiled instantly, and Iva saw genuine emotion flicker across his face. Not performance, not ego, just fatherhood. When the performance ended, Owen scanned the audience nervously until his eyes found both parents clapping. His face lit up immediately. That mattered. No matter what happened between the adults, that still mattered. Afterward, while the children ran ahead toward the parking lot, Shawn lingered beside Iva near the school entrance. Snow drifted softly outside beneath yellow streetlights. She looks happier, Shawn said quietly. Eva knew he meant Lily. She is. Shawn swallowed hard. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. Iva looked at him carefully. Yes, you did. The honesty landed softly between them. Not vicious, just real. Shawn nodded slowly because deep down, he knew she was right. He had seen her disappearing for years. He simply benefited from it. I'm sorry, he whispered. The words came too late, but for the first time they sounded genuine. Eva studied the man she once loved enough to erase herself for. And strangely, she no longer felt hatred, just distance, like looking at an old house after surviving a fire there. Finally, she answered quietly, I know. Not I forgive you, not I miss you, just I know. Then Lily called for her from outside. Mommy Iva turned instinctively toward her children, toward warmth, toward life, toward herself. And when she walked away this time, she did not look back. For a long time, Iva Johnston believed love meant endurance. She believed being a good wife meant sacrificing quietly, being understanding endlessly, giving until there was nothing left of herself except usefulness. A lot of women are taught that. They are praised for patience while being slowly erased, praised for loyalty while carrying marriages alone, praised for keeping the family together, even when the cost is their own identity. But love that requires someone to disappear is not love. It is survival wrapped in guilt. The hardest part of healing was never the courtroom, the betrayal, or even the divorce itself. It was learning that self-respect is not cruelty. Boundaries are not selfishness. And needing acknowledgement for invisible labor does not make someone needy or dramatic. It makes them human. Eva's story was never really about revenge. It was about recognition. Recognition that unpaid labor still has value. Recognition that motherhood is work. Recognition that emotional support, caregiving sacrifice, and stability are not nothing simply because they happen quietly. And maybe most importantly, recognition that kindness without boundaries becomes permission for people to use you. The truth is, some people only realize your value after they lose access to it. But by then, your job is no longer to convince them. Your job is to choose yourself anyway. If this story touched you, tell us in the comments, have you ever felt invisible in a relationship, friendship, or family dynamic? And if you stayed until the end of Iva's journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder that being loving does not mean being small. Sometimes healing begins the moment you finally say, I deserved better all along.